All right, we should be live now, right?
Yep. The little live light is on.
Right on. Smack 'em a gob, everybody. I am pretty sick. So let me get this pulled up. So in the course of this episode, I may have to lay down, but I'm going to be laying down right next to my microphone, so I'll still be very much part of the show. But oh my god, I feel like shit, deja vu. And when I feel like shit, I feel like shit. And Greg just arrived. All right, let's add Greg. All right, Greg's about to come in. And hey, Greg.
Hey, Ralph, what's up?
What's happening, man?
Greg?
We're live. We're ready on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Damn.
Yeah, I just turned it on right now. And,
Okay.
So how you doing, Greg?
I'm doing pretty good. I just discovered a new buffet called Pizza Ranch, so I'm pretty damn happy.
Right on.
Yeah. Plus, it's Born Again, one of the best albums of all time.
I agrees with you. How you doing, Ian?
Hey, I'm half in the bag, so I'm doing pretty good. And anytime to talk about Sabbath is a good time.
Yep. And Tony, how's it
All
going?
good. Everything's good.
So yeah, we're gonna talk about the 40th anniversary. As sick as I am right now, I'm still excited to talk about this album, but I may have to lay down in a little bit, but I'll still be here talking. And all right, so let's go around the table. Let's go to Greg. Greg, how did you discover Born Again?
When I was about 12, my buddy's dad was just getting rid of his LPs. He's they're worthless. I got CDs now. Just pick what you want. I'm flipping through it. I'm like, I've never seen that Black Sabbath album before. And Ian Gillan. I thought Dio was after Ozzy. What the hell is this? Man, I took it home and put it on, and it was just amazing. Just fucking balls to the wall. And Sabbath, and as Ozzy and Dio both have their different sounds, Ward, Butler, and Naomi have a sound separately with Ian Gillan that they never really do again. It's a shame they didn't get a crack at a second record.
You know, my theory on that is I saw the Perfect Strangers tour. I saw the Born Again tour, but I saw the Perfect Strangers tour where they did Child in Time.
Yeah.
And Ian couldn't hit those notes, but he hit higher notes in the Born Again tour, which kind of shows he kind of burnt out his voice on Born Again. That if they would have made a next album with Ian Gillan, well, maybe with Studio Magic, he can hit the crazy highs and shit, but he wouldn't have been able to replicate what I saw live. I think he just demolished his voice on that album because of all those crazy screams, man. Disturbing the Priest, Trash. Those screams he does on those songs are just inhuman, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I think the sickest scream ever caught on tape was the screams at the end of Disturbing the Priest, where he goes, ah, ah. Oh my god, that shit is so cool.
Wicked.
It's the coolest shit ever. And all right, Ian, how'd you discover the album?
When I was getting into Sabbath, I just started buying everything I could, and I got this import greatest hits CD. And I'm trying to remember the fucking name of it, but it had one track from this, Digital Bitch.
Was it Blackest Sabbath?
Might have been it. But I just remember Digital Bitch, and like I just thought it was like the worst song on the fucking album. And I'm like, what the fuck? But as I'm in the record store, and I'm looking at all the Sabbath that I need to get, man, that cover just kept jumping out at me. And at the time, I even think when I first got on CD, it was still an import. It was on Vertigo on CD. And but I had to have it because of that fucking album cover. and I got it, and I was like, wow, this sounds weird. Not only weird for Sabbath, but the actual production on the album and everything. But I dug it, and I was like, oh my God, this shit's a lot better than Digital Bitch. And then I just kept getting drawn to it. I picked it up on vinyl even when I didn't have a record player, just because of that album cover. The front and the back, I think, were amazing. And it's just such an anomaly in Sabbath's history. But it's something every year, since I first heard it, I get more and more and more into it. Today I listened to it about 4 times, and I can only imagine if they do the proper remix, it's probably going to go even higher in my list. I know, Ralph, you say it's your favorite one out of the 80s. And while I can't put it over the Dio albums, I mean, of course, it's right underneath the Dio albums. And, Greg, I think brought up a great point, is a very unique sound on this album from everybody. The drumming on this doesn't sound like Bill's drumming during the Ozzy years or what he did on Heaven and Hell. And Tony is just a fucking beast on this album. I mean, I think, to me, he's the true standout on this record. As great as Gillan is, man, the guitar licks and the solos and everything from Iommi, just holy fuck. And it's a shame this didn't do better. But it's one of those things. It's, a lot of people nowadays love it, but it's still, there's a lot of people that still hate it too. And, like, oh, no. Like Sinzak hates this fucking record, and he's not the only one, but there are a lot of people that love it. And because it was a one and done, and it's such a, Ian Gillan, it was like fucking Black Purple or Deep Sabbath or whatever, it's just such a weird combination. And I don't know if I believe all this shit, was it supposed to be a super group? Was it supposed to be Sabbath? There's a lot of interviews where people contradict themselves. There's ones where Gillan says he hates the album cover, somewhere he says he loves the album cover. There's all this shit going back and forth. I saw one where they blame Geezer fucked up the sound. Some people blame it on Ian fucking up the sound. There's just all kinds of weird shit around this, and then, Bill Ward's back and then he's fucking gone. And then you got fucking ELO in there. I mean, holy shit, and Stone. I mean, there's just so much shit around this record. But first and foremost, it's the music, and I think it's incredible. Other than Digital Bitch.
Tony?
I first discovered this, so I had just kind of got into, Black Sabbath and Dio and Ozzy and all this stuff in the year before, and coming into '83. And was already a big Dio fan from the Holy Diver record coming out. And we had got MTV that summer. So I watched it religiously. And I remember sometime late night was watching MTV, and Mark Goodman, the VJ, said we got some guests in the studio, and he had Geezer and Tony and Ian Gillan in the studio, and they talked about Born Again and this record coming out. And not, so and they played the if I remember, I think they played the Trash video, but I know I saw the Trash video not long after that. That was actually one that was in rotation on MTV. I don't think I ever saw the Zero the Hero video until Dee Snider started hosting that Metal Mania show that became Headbangers Ball maybe a year or so later, and they showed the Zero the Hero video. And those videos are very similar. I would not be surprised if they were both filmed on the same day, because they're so similar. And but at the time, the only thing I owned by Deep Purple was Deepest Purple, the best of Deep Purple. So that was the only thing I was familiar with Ian Gillan. I remember picking up magazines not long after that, all the magazines, Hip Raider and Circus, and we're just talking about, this new super group with Ian Gillan joining Sabbath, and they were calling it Deep Sabbath or Purple Sabbath. And there's just a lot of hype about it. So it was several months before I ever actually picked up the cassette, and I fell in love with it. You know, it's just so dark. I think it might be the heaviest Black Sabbath record. It's just so dark. It's got this menacing sound about it. I never noticed anything about the muddy production as a teen, because I didn't really compare records that much and what sounded better than others at the time. But just always loved it. And I remember driving my father crazy with it, because I would come home from school every day and play music in my room, and I was always playing this. And Dad would come by, and he never really said much about my music or anything, but he just goes, one day he goes, "Why do you listen to that same record every day with that old screaming man on it?" And because and Gillen screams, like you said, he's a monster on here. And Tony's guitar tone is so menacing, and it's just a lot of fuzzy wah wah effect solos, and his solos are just blistering. I mean, he just kind of just barrel out of the song at you. So like I said, it's definitely one of their heaviest records for sure. You mentioned Gillen blowing his voice out. I mean, there is rumors that he blew his voice out during the tour for Born Again. He never sang like he did post Born Again like he did before. He never did. He blew it out during that tour. And it would have been something I would have loved to see. That's interesting that Ralph got to see it. So did they have the Stonehenge set and all when you saw them?
No, because Sunrise Musical Theater is a smaller venue, so they didn't even, I guess they couldn't fit it in there. But yeah, man, it was incredible. I got to see the Born Again tour, and it was awesome to see him do Supernaut. That blew my mind. Wasn't that awesome to see him do Rock and Roll Doctor? I was like, out of every fucking Sabbath song from the Oz years,
Yeah,
play goddamn Rock and Roll Doctor. Give me a break.
you gotta wonder, did they just go, Ian, look through our catalog, and if you know something you like, would you like to do it? And who knows?
Or maybe that just fed in more with him.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think that's what it is, because he's such a different writer than Geezer, like lyrically, such a different singer than Ozzy and Dio, and while I love this album, I think it's some of this stuff is almost parody, like they're trying to get too dark.
You're right.
And then there's other songs where I think Gillen's more in his wheelhouse, like Keep It Warm is more like something he would write.
Yeah, on like one of the Gillen albums, it would fit perfectly on.
Yeah, and as much as I love him as a vocalist, I think his weakest is his lyrics. There's a lot of Deep Purple songs like, what the fuck is this shit about? Mitzi Dupree, what the fuck are you talking about? All kinds of weird shit in old and new Purple. But that voice is so fucking good. It's like Jim Morrison, who knows what the fuck he's talking about, but it sounds good when he sings it, and Gillen's that way. But I think it was a weird dichotomy of them, like, the cover of the album and the Born Again, and I don't know who did I don't know if Geezer did any of the lyrics or if it was all Gillen. And I tend to think it's Gillen because,
it sounds a lot like stuff he would see. I've never really noticed, to be honest with you.
But, it sounds a little try hard on the lyrics for it to be Geezer.
It was mostly Gillen. I've read a lot about this because honestly, my favorite Sabbath record, but heard it so many fucking times, and I believe Disturbing the Priest and maybe Zero the Hero are the only two that Geezer was involved with him on the lyric writing and some form.
And those sound more like something Geezer would throw in.
Yeah. Geezer was the one who thought it was hilarious because they were where they were rehearsing by the convent, and the priest came over all wide-eyed and was like, "Can you guys turn it down a little bit?"
Ralph, when you saw them, did Gillen bring out his congas and play
I'll never forget the vision of that long ass hair during War Pigs. Him playing it. Oh, that shit was so. The thing is, I was really close. Sunrise Musical Theater was so easy to sneak up to, because I had row. I think I don't remember exactly what row, but I had something like row 23, right? So what I did was I got a little white out, and I erased the 3, so it looked like I was row 2, and I'd wait for the lights to go down, and then I run up, and security guards, with the flashlight looking at everybody's ticket, letting us. So I got all the way up front, and I'm right there in front of Gillen and him playing those congos, and during War Pig was fucking epic, man.
That's
It was
awesome.
a really, really good show. And Bev Bevan did a cool fucking drum solo. I was bummed that Gillen wasn't there, but Bev held his own, man. He did good.
Yeah, the only footage I've ever seen, I guess, is that Montreal, bootleg camcorder footage.
Yeah.
It's out. I've got that, of course. I remember seeing them do those 2 songs they did. What did they did? Digital Bitch and Zero to Hero on that show Rock Palace. Howie Mandel. But everybody else that performed on that show were playing live, and Sabbath were lip syncing to the 2 songs.
Yep. Yeah, it was weird.
Geezer was doing the boom like he was doing in Zero to Hero. It's just kind of funny. The camera zooms in on him. He starts doing that. It's kind of crazy.
By this point, Ralph, was Sabbath already your favorite band?
Yeah, they were my favorite band, but in the 70s, dude.
Okay, so
79, I was like, they are my favorite band.
So how did you take it when you first heard this? I mean, when with Dio gone,
I loved it. I fucking
right out the gate.
Right out the gate. Actually, I was very bummed when Gillen left. I don't remember being bummed when Dio left. I don't remember. I might have been. But when I heard Gillen left, and I heard that in a record store, I'll never forget. This dude told me in a record store, Specs. And I was like, what? Oh, man, because they only did 1 album. And Tony, he sounded great on my show. He might have blown out his voice after that show. Anyway,
No, I'm saying I heard he sang well on that tour, but it's like he did it during that tour. So when he went out with Purple.
Oh, yeah. I saw Perfect Strangers. And though he could still hit the highs, he couldn't do Child in Time, which those highs, they're no different than Disturbing the Priest and shit,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
And
I want to go real quick into the chat where Mark Bacchette has not heard the news. He said, Iommi said he can't find the masters to remaster it. Like 2 years ago, he found it.
Yeah.
He announced it. He said he was going to do something with it, and still nothing. And he came out with some excuse not too long ago. Oh, it takes time. No, it doesn't. Just what the fuck are you doing? What, a perfume? That's it? Come on. Get in there. I mean, I know you got Tony Martin stuff coming out, which is great, and fuck Ian Wadley. Fuck Ian. Fuck you very much, Ian. But yeah. Anyway, Will's in the chat too, man. Will Carroll. If you want to jump in, Will, let me know. I'll send you a link. All right, man. I'm sick. I'm gonna lay down. Do I talk about Born Again?
Yeah.
Are you done, Tony?
One thing I did want to say real quick, as far as him blowing his voice out, is first of all, Ralph, amazing. You got to see the tour, but I have several radio broadcasts and soundboard recordings from this tour, and by about late '84, you can hear the difference in Gillen.
Yeah.
Do you have any that are good? Because I've got the Reading, and my copy sounds fucking shitty.
I think that may be the best one. Yeah, it came with the deluxe edition.
Yeah, when the deluxe came out, the deluxe version had the Reading Festival show. I don't think it's the entire show unless they played a pretty short
no. Yeah, no, I've got that. So I know. I mean, that sounds incredible on the remaster. I've got that shit, but I've got a bootleg of the full show of the Reading Festival, and the sound quality is just shit. Not that the performance is bad, but the quality sucks.
This is one called Gillen the Hero, and it's from Worcester, Massachusetts, and it sounds pretty good. And then I've got one from Stockholm, which is like a full show, and they do they're doing Rock and Roll Doctor and Supernaut and a couple of oddball things on here. But they do a lot of songs from the show. But it's like, Ralph was saying before we went on air, they never played Trash live. And that was their first single. I guess the big thing with this was the only time Black Sabbath ever played a cover song live, I mean, other than The Warning, they did Smoke on the Water in concert. I guess they kind of felt like they had to do that. And they do a smoking version of it. They really did.
It was kind of a concession to Gillan because they never say why. They just mentioned he absolutely did not like the song Paranoid and did not want to fucking sing it. But they kind of put it to him like, well, you have to because it's Paranoid, so we'll do Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
And so I did a vinyl rip of, I have the original Westwood one vinyl release of that Worcester show, and that sounds great.
Mhm.
But even on the Reading and all that, I swear, live, this has to be the fucking loudest Black Sabbath ever sounded.
Yeah, nice. I just watched an interview yesterday with Gillan where he talked about he couldn't stand playing Iron Man either.
Yeah,
Just
that was the
yeah. I mean, just lyrically, he said he couldn't wrap his head around it, and because the guy was talking to him about how on the tour he didn't bother to learn any of the songs. I mean, these guys hooked up drunk and stayed drunk the whole fucking time, so it's not like he's doing his homework, studying all the fucking lyrics. He had a book, and then he would turn the pages with his feet. Problem was they're doing all the fucking smoke shit on stage and he couldn't see it, and said it was a fucking nightmare. But he said like he heard Iron Man, of course, he probably knew it from when it came out, but he said to sing it to him, he's just like, I don't get it, So I think it was kind of, it's awesome, but it's doomed from the start if it's going to be Black Sabbath. If it would have been like, something else and they call it something else and they don't have to play those other songs, it really could have turned into something even greater as it went on, but it's kind of like how it was nice when the Sabbath was forced to call themselves Heaven and Hell, which, that wasn't by choice, but they loved that because they were called Heaven and Hell. Dio didn't have to sing the Ozzy shit anymore.
I think the only Dio song, the ones I have, the only Dio song they did was Heaven and Hell.
Also did Neon Nights.
Okay.
Neon Nights was done as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that I actually have one of the concerts with that, and they must have been kicking out the fog because I forget what the hell Gillan starts doing in the middle of the song, but since he can't see the lyrics, he just starts riffing part of the verse again. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
My gorgeous girlfriend said Highway Star would have been amazing if they would have done that. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
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 For sure.
Anyway, I don't remember, man. My brain is hazy of when the first time I heard Born Again, but I do remember I had a cassette, those 90-minute deals. One side was Born Again, the other side was Bark at the Moon. And those two albums we wore out at North Shore Park, getting high and stuff back in '83, and just loved it. Then this tour came. I mean, with the group of people I was hanging with, which is not the majority, which we now know online. I'm just talking about the circle of people I hung out with. We all fucking loved Born Again. We didn't know about the backlash. We didn't know that people didn't like it. I heard about it later on. Even pre-internet, I heard people saying how it sucked. But I loved it. All my friends loved it. We went to the tour. We loved it. Pissed they didn't do Trash, but they are fucking awesome, man. And this album, to me, I love every song off it. There's not a bad song on here, man. I love it all. And I love the bonus track, The Fallen.
Oh, that should have been on the album.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. That's
a wicked sounding song. It really is.
Because I love it because it sounds like fucking, Jimmy Page. you know, the guitar work on it sounds a lot more like Jimmy Page. You know, that, you know, that's such, you know,
Hear
way,
that.
you know, and I wonder if that's
You're
why
right.
it didn't make it, but I think it's a much stronger song than, of course, Digital Bitch. But I mean, it had to be a hard time in '83 because, you know, you got Ozzy, who of course wins the popularity contest, you know, and he's got Bark at the Moon, and that's fucking huge. Even though I think the album, like listening to it now, to my ears, it's a little overproduced and too much, you know, keyboards and shit. You got Holy Diver, which is, in my opinion, perfectly fucking produced, you know, an amazing sounding album. And then you have this, which, you know, I mean, you can't kill these great songs, but man, if it just sounded better. But, you know, it's weird too, because it just looks like they have no stability by '83. You know, it's like Dio's, you know, they come back with Dio and they get their name out there again, and then he's gone, you know, and Dio and Ozzy are going on to great shit as solo artists. But Sabbath just looks like they can't get their shit together, you know. And even though this charted high for them, it was like initially, like I think people ran out because what the fuck is this going to sound like? You know, Ian Gillan and Deep Purple. But it was like it was their first album that wasn't, you know, didn't go gold. You know, even though the, you know, the first week chart positions were good for them. But and if you look at the tour, you know, there was a good amount of dates that were canceled too. And they came up with certain excuses at first, but then it was later revealed that it was, you know, due to poor ticket sales. Was your show, was it well attended, Ralph?
Yeah. Yes, though it wasn't a huge arena, but it was packed. Yes.
Right. And this would be the last time, really, I think that Sabbath were relevant, you know, for a long, long time. I mean, even though they still did some not stadiums, but arenas on Seven Star, a lot of those were canceled, you know, even more so than this tour. And you didn't see them on MTV like you did Dio and Ozzy, you know, and it's unfortunate, but it's one of those things like now everybody's like, you know, Monday morning quarterback and loves this shit. But I'm so excited when it finally does get done, and I think it's going to get put on the back burner because they did just do the remaster a couple years ago. But if they could get that, what's the guy's name that's been doing all the Sabbath stuff? Steven Wilson or some shit?
Steve Wilson, yeah.
Yeah. If he can do to this album what he did to Technical Ecstasy, I think it could change a lot of minds. The remastered sound better, but an actual remix, you know, if he could go through and do the whole album and make it, I don't know, but I got a great feeling what's buried in that mix that could be revealed that I think would change a lot of people's minds about this record.
They did bring it up a little bit in that remaster.
I would be shocked, utterly shocked, if I would like the remaster more. I just love the murky production of this album. I think it enhances the songs for me. I like the dirtiness, the dinginess. I just love it, man. Do I want to hear it remastered? Of course I do. But I really doubt it's going to be better for my ears. But 9 people out of 10 will tell you this album sounds like shit, you know? So
right, but I just think if you, especially, you know, go back to Technical Ecstasy, you know, because that was always my least favorite of the Ozzy, you know, of the 70s era and stuff. But man, when I heard what he did to that and stuff that I've never heard before, you know, listening to that album hundreds of times, you know, if he could do that same magic on this, holy fuck. I mean, I would definitely, you know, first day buyer for that shit.
I gotta agree with Ralph though. I love the original sound, that murkiness. It's perfect. It's all fucking Lovecraftian and fits well with how dark the album is.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, if you think about it, with the way it starts out with Trashed and then ends with Keep It Warm, you could use this as the perfect soundtrack to a slasher movie. You know, you got everything from when it starts out with something heinous up to when the final girl's walking down the beach.
Yeah. A friend of mine got a
But
acetate.
oh, sorry. No, had wanted to ask you if you had heard the Manor tapes, which was the work in
Yeah.
progress demo.
Yeah, I've got a CD of that as well. It's like
Yeah, I've
reverse
got that.
album cover. Yeah.
And
A friend of
what
mine.
I like about that is my only complaint about the production is Bill's drums are a little louder on that. But sorry, you were saying about the
Yeah, I was saying a friend of mine is a big Sabbath collector, and he for a while there he owned an acetate version of Born Again that he bought online, and he made a CDR copy for me. He actually ended up selling it some years later because it was pretty valuable, and it was a different sounding mix to it, but not that big of a difference. You could hear some stuff, you hadn't really heard, a little stuff a little bit more clearer, but it was, like I said, a little bit of difference to it. But I'm kind of like you guys. I kind of like that murky sound. I just would rather listen to the regular version. I've got the copy I own is a Vertigo pressing because it's got like a yellow insert in it, and that's the only vinyl version I've ever owned of it. I don't know if the different pressings sound different or not, but I've always been happy with that remaster that they did, or the repackaging that came out. Castle did it back in the early
I had that too.
90s, the 90s
Yeah.
version. That was pretty good sounding as well,
Yeah, I think most, like I said, after I heard Technical and saw what they could do, with stuff that you don't hear, because of how they work the production. If they've got those, they can bring other shit up in the mix. I definitely don't want a re-recording. I just want to hear, nobody wants like a Still Hungry, kind of fucking result. But man, just to hear it clearer, I think it would be a lot beefier, and I'm all for that because it's such a heavy fucking record. I think you beef this up, it's going to be even more fucking hammer smash his face kind of thing.
I always thought the story behind the cover was pretty funny. If people out there haven't actually heard it, but supposedly a guy named Crusher Jolie did a lot of album. He's the guy that did like the Ozzy stuff. He did Speak of the Devil. He did all the whatever that writing that was around Ozzy's frames and all that stuff. Great designer, and he was working for Ozzy, but he was asked to do the Sabbath Born Again cover, and he basically just threw some stuff together because he thought, okay, I'll throw something. I can't not do it. I'll throw something together that they'll hate, and then they'll just turn it down. That way I won't piss off the Ozzy camp, but doing a Sabbath record. And so he tried to think what colors would clash that just not going to look good. And he came up with this, and the guys in, I guess Geezer and Tony loved it.
Wow.
Well, I think it's perfect.
I think it looks great.
I don't get the hate for it.
No, me neither. I mean, you see this, you're a kid and you walk in the record store and you see this in the rack, you're gonna go right to it,
Oh, fuck yeah. And what's even funnier is the same year it was used by Depeche Mode for a single, but it was like, more flesh tones, natural looking on the baby.
It was a real photo of the baby that they used.
Right.
I think Crusher said he found it in like a Life magazine or something is what he
Mind
used.
Alive.
I think it was a medical magazine.
Mm-hmm. Something,
called Mind
I
Alive.
was always on the impression that album cover background had to do with Deep Purple.
Yeah, possibly.
That's what I was taught, but maybe not.
But now, I mean, what's better than a fucking, Tony's got it on now, a Black Sabbath Born Again shirt. That's just a badass looking shirt, man. And it totally fits. I mean,
on this over the years. I mean, this shirt's old, man. I got this thing in like the 90s, like probably like late 90s when they did a run of shirts like this. And I've worn, I wore it all during the non-metal days, and when metal wasn't popular, I'd be wearing it, and I'd have people like, oh, that's the coolest shirt. I love that record, people come out of the woodwork. Everybody knows it,
I mean, to me, it works on every level because, you're calling it Born Again. Here's a new version of the band. The imagery fits with the title. It's got an epic title track. It's, to me, everything fucking works. I I don't know. I guess there's no accounting for taste, but I think it's perfect. And to me, it's one of the best Sabbath album covers.
I remember one of the funniest things back in the day, reading something where it was a rumor that the band had found God, and it was a religious record, and that's why it was called that.
Well, I think it's the second best cover right after Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I love again. What a great album cover. And like I said, man, this shit was a hit with all my friends. Yes, they played smaller venue. I guess that was like, for me, back then, I was like, wow, they're playing Sunrise. Let's get our tickets soon. It's going to sell out quick, you know? And, you know, I didn't know of any turmoil in Sabbath at the time. I really didn't, because all we had back then was like Hip Raider and, you know, Circus, all fluff pieces, you know, you didn't hear any, you know, bad stuff, but it was just, to me, a flawless album, man. I don't see nothing wrong with it. I love the little fucking instrumentals, the Dark and Stonehenge. And
Oh yeah.
my favorite is definitely Disturbing the Priest. That's my favorite track off it. And like all those screams, man. It's just
It's so heavy.
And I don't mean to say this because I want to be controversial. I want to be like that guy that posts Sammy Hagar stuff Ian was talking about before the show. No, I don't want to be like these people. I am telling you the truth. This is how I honestly feel. I like Born Again more than the Dio stuff. And I'll explain why when I'm done coughing. The Dio stuff, which I love, by the way, to me, they're masterpieces. They're perfect albums. Heaven and Hell, Mob Rule, they're perfect. They're perfection. Where with the Ozzy stuff, it was more organic, more, you know, feel. It wasn't like so. And Born Again went back to that. It wasn't so perfect. You know, Born Again, I mean, listen to that riff of Disturbing the Priest. It's a little unorthodox with the vocals and all that going on. And then you have Zero the Hero, which later became Her Black Wings in Paradise City.
And
So true.
Iommi copied himself too on Get a Grip on Forbidden, which is essentially Zero the Hero with different lyrics.
Oh, is that? Yeah, I got to listen to that again because I do remember the last track on the Humanizer had that Zero the Hero riff too. Buried
Alive.
It has a similar riff to Zero the Hero. But I'm telling you, man, after the Ozzy stuff, to me, it's Gil, and then it's Dio, you know, of course. And I love the Dio stuff, and even though Born Again doesn't sound like any incarnation of Black Sabbath, it does have that sporadic, weird time signature, crazy stuff going on it. And it doesn't sound like any Black Sabbath album. That's what I love about. That's why this band's my favorite band, man. They can change their styles and be fucking awesome.
Another thing I think too with Tony, I think this was the last time, you know, to my ears, that he sounded like truly inspired and original. I think from this point on, you heard a lot of him copying his past. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong, he still came up with great riffs. I mean, even though I'm not a big Tony Martin fan, you know, The Shining is a great fucking riff. But man, you listen to the riffs and the soloing on this, and this does not sound like a middle-aged, you know, 70s rock guitar player that's out of ideas. He sounds born again. I mean, he sounds fucking hungry as hell and different. There's no other album guitar-wise where he sounds like he did on this. You know, even though there's still those heavy riffs that you know and love from Sabbath, there's just something different about this whole fucking thing. But yes,
I gotta
still
agree.
Fits under the Sabbath banner.
I gotta agree with Ian because I never thought of it that way before. Because the reason I hate 13 so much is because they're copying themselves. They're doing Born Again. They're doing the song. God damn it! I gotta sneeze. Hold on. Wait, it's not. Don't you hate when you gotta sneeze and then it goes away?
Also,
13 redid Planet Caravan. They redid NIV. They redid the song Black Sabbath 2 times on
Into the Void.
on 13. And the weird thing of them copying the song Black Sabbath 2 times in 13, they actually do it on the first 2 songs back to back. It's like Jesus Christ. But what Ian was saying, how Tony later, and believe me, I love Tony Martin. I love the 7 Star. I love all that shit. I love the Humanizer. But he didn't go crazy like he did on Born Again. Because Born Again was the last time Iommi sounded like that. Where later on, it sounded like pretty much Heaven and Hell, Tony Iommi, Mob Rule, you know? But he wasn't repeating himself. He just did the musical vibe to those songs, where 13, he was just repeating himself. And I never thought of that. That's a really good point, Ian, because I never ever thought, hey, you know, Born Again is the last time Tony Iommi did something out of the norm, you know, where, dude, you listen to Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell, that doesn't sound like Ozzy shit, you know, it's totally different too. But then with Born Again, he even went even more extreme. And then after that, he came down a bit, you know, but he's still awesome, you know.
I think the thing is, you know, after this album, when it becomes the Tony Iommi experience, maybe he felt like he had to do something to keep that sound alive. You know, you don't have Geezer, you don't have Bill, you know, you don't have a named singer. You know what I mean? I think it was too much of a burden on him. So the safest thing would be to copy the past, where he had more freedom here, because he had, even if he ventured off, there's other Sabbath members that can keep that Sabbath spirit or sound, you know, I think.
Kevin Kaler said he got in trouble for wearing a purple Born Again shirt to school and was asked to turn it inside out or get suspended.
You got a little praise here, Ian. Somebody wrote, Ian's an incredible singer. That's awesome.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I try.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I might blow my voice out, though, in this video.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of which, I'll show you something funny out of my album collection. So, you know, the Black Sabbath Greatest Hits record has been repackaged 1,000 times. It originally had the Triumph of Death album cover on it. Well, here's a version, and they put Ian Gillan on the cover of this one.
My God.
So I saw this when I was at a flea market, and I found it, and I said, "Oh, this is cool." And I flipped it over and realized it was this, you know, all Ozzy songs. But I was like, I gotta buy this just for it's a novelty piece, you know.
And it's all Ozzy stuff, huh?
Yeah, it's the same thing as the Black Sabbath's Greatest Hits. Just been floating around on NAMM's records for years.
That's crazy. I have a Van Halen's Greatest Hits that has Mitch Malloy on it.
Oh, really?
Very rare.
Yeah,
that's
very rare. That's very rare.
What was I gonna say? I was about to say something. That Black Sabbath album you held up. That's all the fault of the guy that was managing Black Sabbath during Volume 4.
Mm-hmm.
And they fired him. He was suing them while they were making Sabotage. And I just recently read Geezer Butler's book. And, you know, when he left Sabbath, you know, Tony did the 7 Star, but then when he did Eternal Idols, he asked Geezer to come back. So Geezer came back for Eternal Idols. But then he found out Tony was being managed by that same guy that ripped them off mercilessly and sued them in the 70s.
That wasn't Jim Simpson, that was the other guy, the guy that the Ritz composed about.
The Ritz about. No, not Jim Simpson. I can't remember his name.
I know the guy's name. I can't think of it though.
Patrick Meehan.
That's it.
I was about to say.
Meehan.
I was about to say it was Patrick something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crazy. You know, it's like, dude, I was going to come back and join Sabbath, and you got this scumbag managing you now? Fuck that. I want nothing to do with this guy. So, and Axel Fiend said, Patrick Meehan, see, he knows his stuff. I want to say hi to everybody in the chat. I'm laying down looking at you guys type, but But all right, let's keep going, man. All right. So
Somebody asked, did anybody heard the Zero the Hero by Cannibal Corpse? Oh yes.
yes, it's on the Hammer Smash Face EP.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Before we move on, though, another weird story a lot of people might not know is during the Forbidden album, Black Sabbath was managed by Reuben Kincaid.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. Yeah. Fun times for Sabbath.
Yes, it was.
You always come up with these tidbits I never knew, man.
Yeah, that's my job.
You're awesome. You do your homework.
Well, you guys know about them almost blowing Ian up during the recording?
Yes, you can tell the story, but yeah, it involves Bill Ward.
There's fire involved. It was Bill Ward.
Yeah. Well, they decided to prank Ian Gillan because he loved his little nature stuff, had his little tent set up out by the pond. So they took a couple pyrotechnic stage charges and set him off in his tent one day.
That's right. He was living
this.
He was like, pond. Yeah, he was living in a tent. He wouldn't live inside. That was kind of crazy. That the story behind Trash was pretty good one too. They said they all rented these Ford Granadas, which is like the most uncool looking car ever, and they basically were driving around the track at the manor, and Ian stole Bill Ward's Granada and basically trashed it. He flipped it, and that's when he wrote the lyrics to Trashed about that car, about the running the car fast and it getting out of control, and he flipping it several times, and he trashed Bill Ward's car. Poor Bill Ward. They really always like joked and pranked on him all the time, but I guess he liked it.
They set him on fire.
I know that the whole thing about that story about them setting him on fire, and his mom like yelled at Ozzy or somebody for like almost killing him.
It was Tony. It was Tony. And the funny story behind it was Tony was like, "Hey, Bill, can I set you on fire?" And Bill goes, "Okay." That's how it happened. And then there was another time they painted Bill some color, and he had to go to the hospital because of his pores on his skin. He couldn't get oxygen.
Yeah.
And the ironic part about that, the same thing happened to the models on Eternal Idols. Both of them had to be rushed to the hospital for being painted holes.
Wow.
Can't paint somebody color, man, because the oxygen on your pores, it can kill you.
That's what happened to
poor
Jinx.
Bill. He's the worst treated. He's like the Michael Anthony of Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Never gets any respect. Everybody fucks with him. I thought it was so horrible when Sabbath got back together, and they did the tour with Mike Borden from Faith No More. I love him as a drummer, but it's like, God damn, where's the respect to this guy? And then those two horrible new tracks they did on Reunion. I don't care what anybody says; those songs suck. Bill's not even.
But they're better than 13.
I don't know. I'd almost.
Yes, they are. I actually like those songs.
I do as well.
I wish they would have done that song they did at Ozfest, the Scary Nightmares or
Scary Dreams.
Yeah, I like that. Psycho Man, that shit's terrible.
Scary Dreams is a good song.
Yeah, Scary Dreams I thought was kick ass, but Psycho Man, get the fuck out of here.
I just noticed I was looking at the back cover of the album from the photo session and just realized this is from the same photo shoot that Ralph was using for background photos from the same, I guess, during this photographer was doing the shoot. I wonder why they didn't put the dog in the middle.
Doesn't it?
Oh, I always thought that was Jeff Nichols. That's a dog. Okay.
That picture looks a little Photoshop, don't you think? I guess it's not. But the background kind of
I've seen it before. So, in different magazines.
As far as I know, that's the only picture with Bill in that lineup.
Speaking of Jeff Nichols, what do you guys think of his performance on this one? Because I've gone back and forth. Some days I listen to this shit and I think there's too much Jeff Nichols. And then other times I think he kind of adds a lot to this one. What do you guys think?
I think everything about this album is perfect. So I think
I I've never really took that much notice about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, he's
Well-
got the you know, the dark and stuff, like the little intro pieces. You definitely needed him on that, and Disturbing the Priest, he's got a little extra stuff in, but you mostly just hear guitars and bass on this, really.
I don't know. I think there's much more keyboard presence on this one than on the Dio albums, you know, but not like, you know, like Bon Jovi keyboards.
Right. It's,
You know,
it mixes in. It's heavy. He's playing chords.
Yeah.
You know, Mark Valley just asked in that picture, what is Ian Gillan wearing? That was actually a tablecloth that Ian Gillan cut holes in and put on. That's a tablecloth he's wearing.
Yep.
Yeah, he was kind of a bohemian back then, living outside in a tent. Weird dude. And joining Sabbath, he got drunk and agreed to join them. Then the next day he's like, "What?"
That's just
I couldn't
before
tell if that
Richard
was a
Branson.
real poncho or a Sears poncho.
That's right before Richard Branson's mother came running out going, "Where's my tablecloth?"
So, yeah, man, this is an awesome album. Very maligned, but I notice as time goes by, it becomes more loved by people. And it's a very big influential album to death metal bands. There's a lot of death metal bands that point at this album as a big
Yeah.
because at the time, this shit was just as heavy as Celtic Frost and Merciful Fate and all the stuff that was underground, you know, Venom and stuff. This was just as heavy as that shit. In some cases, even heavier. I mean,
I do find it funny though that so many death metal bands like this. I mean, while it is heavy, you know, like Gillan is the antithesis of guttural vocals. You know, like if you know, the total opposite direction of a Chris Barnes would be what Gillan does. But I also get the heaviness, the imagery of it. You know, lyrically, you know, it's very dark. But do you guys all think this is you know, do you think it's a perfect album, or is there a song like I don't like Digital Bitch? Do you guys have a song on here you don't like, or you know, do you think something should have been taken off and The Fallen putting on, or do you think just add The Fallen?
Just add The Fallen, yeah. But even without The Fallen, I think it's a great record.
Yeah. I have no problem. I'll be honest. The first couple of years, I wasn't the biggest fan of Keep It Warm, but yeah, it totally grew on me.
I find that's normally when I see somebody talk about this, they'll list that as their least favorite, and to me, it's always been one of my favorites since I first heard this. There's just something about it that's so different, and I think it has to do with, you know, Gillan finding his comfort zone. Because I think that is the most where, you know, I read an interview with Bill Ward where he says he watched when Gillan did his vocal tracks for that song. And he said that was like the most like calm and relaxed he saw him during the whole sessions. You know, he said that was like 100% pure Ian. And I don't know, that song has just always worked for me. And I'm surprised that most people look at that the way I look at Digital Bitch. But you know, everybody's different.
I'd say Disturbing the Priest is my favorite, and probably Born Again is my second favorite song on it. And they're both this, you know, slower songs.
Yeah, mine would be Thrash and Disturbing the Priest first, then I'd say Thrash. And then
That's probably number 3 for me.
I love them all. I love every track on here. I like The Fallen just as much as any song on this album. Yeah.
I love every song on it, and I love The Fallen too. But I mean, this is just perfect the way it is. It doesn't really need anything added to it. I mean, it doesn't hurt it. And if I was really gonna try to insert it into the track listing, I'd probably do it at the end of side 1, because the Trashed, Disturbing the Priest, and Zero to Hero with Stonehenge and The Dark in between, it all just flows together so perfectly and just builds this insane mood it would always drive me nuts. And for the most part, everyone I knew liked this, but you'd still run into people occasionally that are like, oh, this is dumb or this and that. And oh, Zero the Hero is so monotonous. It's really not. I mean, okay, it's got that chugging, constant riff, but Iommi is just a wild man on this. He's constantly doing different shit, little licks throughout the whole song that just keep it exciting. But Disturbing the Priest and Zero the Hero would be my two favorites. But I love everything on it. Although I will agree with Ian slightly on the first time I heard this, as much as I loved the album, Digital Bitch, I was like, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
everything that comes before it is so heavy and loud. And then you get to something that's almost a little bit of a joke. It kind of comes out of fucking left field.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
riff on that song, when that riff kicks in, it's such a heavy riff, and then that guitar solo just goes meow, meow. It's like just comes out of left field. He's just going nuts, man.
It might be the lyrics for
The
me.
lyric, I could
I always
understand
hated
the lyrics.
she's so rich, the digital bitch. I just always found that kind of stupid and lazy. And also it's like side one is just so perfect in the doominess and the gloominess of it, and then you got that. It just, to me, it sticks out like a sore thumb, but it's pure fucking Gillan.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that would be interesting is if this would have lasted, at even just one more album, where would it have gone? You take Bill Ward out, you got Bev Bevan, who, I always kind of really fucking ELO guy, and I love ELO, but I don't mix my fucking ELO and my fucking Sabbath.
No,
Well,
but how
was
that
from
came
the
about, Ian, is Don Arden managed Black Sabbath and DLO.
Oh yeah. No, I get that, and they're from, they're all from Birmingham and shit like that. So I get all that. I mean, I gotta say, when I heard the the remaster of Born Again, when they added on the Reading tracks, and you got to hear them with much better sound quality, I'm like, damn, he did a good job. I can't fault the guy. And I think he's closer to Bill Ward than Vinny was. Even though I love Vinny, but I love Vinny with Dio. To me, Vinny's just
he's
not,
got a style of his own. I mean,
yeah, he's not Bill Ward, and he didn't try to be. I'll give him respect for that, but I want to hear that Bill Ward looseness when I hear Sabbath.
Oh yeah.
But I wonder, if they would have went on from here, would it have kept this evil tone, or would Gillan would have put more of his style into it? Would have been more of a Deep Purple kind of thing than what they came up with here? I mean, interesting things to ponder.
Could have sounded like Seventh Star.
What?
It could have sounded like Seventh Star. I mean, because being the next in line.
Interesting point I want to make about that real quick. Although I don't think it would have sounded completely like it, because there is definitely Iommi going for a commercial bent on that one. I mean, I still like the record, but it's one of my least liked from the whole Sabbath canon. But second side of the album, Danger Zone and Angry Heart, I swear to you, they had to have been written during this time period with Gillan originally in mind. They sound almost like
from that writing session or something. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I've always thought that, especially back then, when I basically Seventh Star was my introduction to Glenn Hughes, other than this couple of songs that were on Deepest Purple that I heard of, Burn and Stormbringer. And honestly, all I knew was David Coverdale was the singer at that period. And so I always kind of thought that Glenn Hughes on Seventh Star kind of sounded a little bit like Ian Gillan minus the screams, just vocally. It kind of still stayed in that Deep Purple realm in a way.
I think they had the same Coke dealer at the time.
Probably
that
did.
Have something to do with it.
But so much stuff, things happened so fast back then. I mean, things happened within, bands lasted 10 months and then they were off to do something else. And right. Gillan already got word, probably before the Sabbath tour even started, that Deep Purple was going to do a reunion. So he knew what was happening.
Yeah, I don't think his heart was in it. You know, I think he did a great, job. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the songs still stand up, but I just I don't know. I don't think he wanted to be the lead singer in Black Sabbath. And he definitely saw the money that he would have got from the Deep Purple reunion. Here you're on tour with Sabbath, you're canceling shows due to lack of ticket sales, you're singing songs you don't believe in 100%. So maybe, I mean, this just happened perfectly. It was meant to be a one and done, but I wish there would have been a point where they came back, and
Oh yeah, this is like I said, we all love this record so much. It's such a magical record, and it was basically thrown together. Just look at bands now; they spend 5-6 years working on a record, and it's just not even good when it comes out. These guys threw some stuff together in a matter of months and weeks, and they got this masterpiece of such a heavy record.
That's why I think it's the most immediate sounding outside of the first Sabbath album, because that was pretty much done the same way, and they both have that swing.
Mm-hmm.
No Word, no Sabbath.
It was I hear you there, but no, I mean, it was a magical time for metal too. Bands weren't fucking lazy. I think Boston was the first band that ever took a fucking break. I mean,
and they acted like that was forever. I think that Boston was like 2.5 years between albums.
Well, no,
that's the norm now.
I mean, Don't Look Back was 78, and then what? Third Stage was 86.
Well, I'm talking about between the first two. Then it was a long gap.
But I mean, and then you had what Def Leppard did between Pyromania and that. But I mean,
we're coming out of the 70s.
I gotta say something. I remember vividly in the 70s. Don't Look Back took forever to come out. I thought it took forever because time was slow back then. Same thing with Pyromania. Pyromania came out 2 years after fucking High and Dry. It was like an eternity for me.
Yeah,
how it's to be expected. Bark of the Moon took forever. Kind of understandable because
yeah.
Randy.
I think there's something to be said back then. They just knew it was like album tour. You knocked it out, and there was that freshness to it, And it's weird though that worked so good for bands back in the day, But now it's kind of like whatever happens. I think bands suffer. Sometimes there's bands that, I know Ralph says Overkill puts out too many albums, where maybe if they took some time, they put out a stronger album. But then you got other bands that take forever, fucking Chinese Democracy, and it's fucking horrible.
Well, back then it was the record industry. I mean, they were wanting product, so they put you, and you made money off putting records out, and you made money off your publishing, and it's much different than that now. I mean, most of these groups now, I mean, like you see all these project groups that come out like Frontiers Records. They basically just give all those guys like $10,000 to make a record. Here you go, and we own it.
Oh yeah,
pay some money up front, so you can pay your bills.
That's why George Lynch is in 75 bands. He's got a house note. He just takes that fucking that first down payment they give him, and
exactly, doesn't matter the quality of it.
No.
Yeah, I got a video coming up soon on this channel. It's called "What the Hell is Wrong with the Name George Lynch?" And just wait for that video to understand what I mean by that. What the hell is wrong with that name, George Lynch?
I know a lot of people whose last name is Lynch.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that name, but I'll go into bigger details on the video coming up. I think it's tomorrow or maybe Saturday. I don't know. But as the viewers of my channels have seen, I've been doing the Only News That Matters just about every day. And I got Only News That Matters stuff all the way till the 18th of this month.
So, oh, wow.
And a lot of News That Matters is going to be coming up soon for this channel. But going back to Born Again, dude, that fucking solo that Iommi does on Trashed, probably the most insane Tony Iommi solo. Like right out of the gate, the guy comes out with this ripping solo that's just crushing, man. It's, oh my God. And this song was loved by Gillan because Gillan re-recorded it on a solo album with Tony.
Yeah. Yep. Gillan's in.
Yeah. I never listened to that, or I think I might have heard a little bit of it, but I didn't like it. I can't
It's not
remember.
as good of a version, but it's cool for what it is. We were talking about the music videos that they did, and the band, the only participation the band has in these music videos is just this live footage of them, in concert with the lit up stage and all, with the lit up drum riser and all, which I thought looked so cool. And of course, Bev Bevan's in the videos playing drums. But the characters that they use, and especially in Zero to Hero, I mean, those are some freaky looking stuff. It almost looks like Hammer horror, like from
Yeah.
Hammer era of horror.
But they also flow into one another. It's like
Yeah.
it's like one
It's like
story.
a little mini movie. Yeah.
Oh
And
man,
they were there like force feeding that guy, and he's just like he's some kind of like burnout or something. I don't know. It's just crazy.
The concept of the video is trashed. The guy gets kidnapped.
Mhm.
yeah.
And in Zero the Hero, they turn him into a vegetable.
Yeah, pretty much.
To feed him ketchup and shit. And he's
Yeah.
chewing and smiling and looking up at that Hitler looking dude. The guy looked like Hitler.
Yeah.
But I love it. I just adore early music videos because they're so stupid, they're awesome.
Yeah, most make no sense. And that's what was the cool thing about it.
Yeah, that one kind of, and there is a censored version. There's an uncensored version of Zero the Hero where they show chicks in their underwear. They took that out, TV version.
I think those are the versions that with the chicks maybe are on that DVD or VHS that came out years ago. Like all that stuff.
I think it is. And you can see the full version on YouTube too. There's an uncensored version of it.
But man, I'll never forget. I ordered the. I don't know how old you are, Greg, but I know Tony and Ralph will remember this. Like in Metal Edge, you used to be able to order shit out of the back. You could get all kinds of weird like bootleg shit. And I ordered the program from the Born Again tour, and I got it. It was like in mint condition, and I think I probably paid like $15 in the fucking 80s for it. And my dad cut it up and made a collage. I don't know why. And I was so pissed. I'm like, why did you do that? He goes, I don't know. I was, drunk and did. Same thing. He took my Dehumanizer shirt and cut the sleeves off. And I was so pissed off. Like, God damn it, Dad. Stop drinking.
Yeah, I think record companies should force bands to make 2 albums a year. Because it seemed like back in the 70s when bands would do 2 albums a year, those albums would rule. They would
rule,
But
I think as much as I bitch about that, I think a lot of it has to do with younger artists. I mean, you got to think we're all older now than what this band was when they did this shit, and maybe an older band doing something, maybe they just don't have it in them anymore. As much as I love hearing new music from legacy bands that I love, it never, I mean, sometimes you luck out like with Priest with Firepower, but even that, I mean, as much as I think we all probably love Firepower, what are you going to pick between that and, Screaming for Vengeance or, Hellbent for Leather,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just, there's so much sand in the fucking hourglass. And then you're just like coming up with a reason to tour.
Yeah, well, hey, everybody can't be Voivod. There's very few bands that release great albums.
Hey, Greg, where'd you get that picture?
Oh, buddy of mine that does a meme page for The Simpsons made it.
Okay. Because I put that up not too long ago.
Yeah, I saw you and a couple other people did. Yeah,
I did not make that, but I did put it up.
he put it up on a Simpsons meme page about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago. Now I've had it, and I think it just went out from there.
Wow. Johnny Neptune said Queen of the Reich is one of the funniest videos ever. Yes, I would. I will tell you the 2 most bizarre videos of the 80s for me. Number 2, because it's hard to watch. It really is hard to watch. Except Midnight Mover. What the fuck?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
What was it? It was like 20 some cameras in a circle or something.
It's spinning the whole time. It wouldn't
There's two
stop.
versions. There's a version that doesn't do that too, because it was
Yeah.
causing people with epilepsy to freak out.
The version MTV showed back in the day was the non-stop camera rolling version.
Hmm.
And to
Yeah,
me,
watching that.
it's the most bizarre, but it's so bad, it's awesome video ever. Docket breaking the chains.
I was gonna say breaking the chains. Yep.
That
That
part
is like-
the part where the chick comes out going, "I'll be back."
Yeah. And then Don laying on the bed in his Luke Skywalker robe at the end.
Yeah. George got little
And
chain.
yeah, Lynch with that stupid fucking, hair dye that cost him the Ozzy job,
Yeah. They thought he was
Terrible.
the guy from Kaja Gugu.
Yep.
Don Dokken recently came out and said the reason George Lynch had that hair was because of Kaja Gugu. He actually, he's like, well, that makes sense.
There you go.
I remember seeing that Breaking the Chains video. I was like, dude, this dude got a Kaja Gugu haircut. The only one ever.
He was shy.
Yeah. But these videos, I don't know, man. There's a magic to them. I wouldn't even put this as ridiculous. I just put it as awesome.
It's horror. It's got a horror vibe to it,
Yeah.
Just really odd. It's like I said, it's like Hammer or Warhol or some kind of weird movie like that,
Yeah, with the people walking through the graveyard. It's just so cool. It's so metal.
Hmm.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with these videos,
Now, Ralph, let me ask you, because you were the oldest at the time, you saw the tour and everything.
I'm still the oldest.
Yeah, I know. What do you think is the reason, why, you look back at 83, you got, Born Again, Holy Diver, and Bark at the Moon. Why do you think this, did the least out of all those, record sales wise, concert wise? Can you think of any one factor?
No, I mean, maybe because it was too heavy for the masses, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It is the heaviest out of all three albums.
It was heavy and it scared people.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, it never really lets up in intensity either. I mean, I like Ozzy. Bark at the Moon is far from my favorite. There's a couple songs on it I really, really like, but there is a ton of filler on that album that's just meant to appeal. Born Again is just loud, unwieldy in your face, and it's lightning in a bottle what they want to do. If you like it, great. If not, fuck you.
Yeah.
Lightning in a bottle. That's a good way of putting it, for sure.
How would you guys rank those three albums from 1983?
Well, I would put Born Again at the top, Holy Diver number 2, and Bark at the Moon number 3. And I love them all. I love all three.
Same here, but I got to put Holy Diver number 1, and then Born Again number 2, and then Bark.
Right on.
I would agree with Tony. Greg?
Born Again number 1, Holy Diver number 2, and Bark at the Moon number 3.
Suck it, Ozzy.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, if Peace of Mind had been an option, Ozzy wouldn't even make that 3. I love Jake E. Lee, and the songs on that album that are brilliant are legitimately awesome, like the title track. But then you got shit on there like So Tired.
Thank you. That song
day.
sucks.
Yes, it does.
You hear that, Ralph?
Yeah, I don't
Keep
agree with
laying
that.
down. That song sucks.
Hey, Greg and Ian, you're making me sicker.
But the video for So Tired was really cool. But it was kind of, that goes back to the horror thing again.
I'll give you a little tidbit about that video. Ozzy canceled. Ozzy was coming down here with Motley Crue. He canceled, postponed the show for a few months because while he shot So Tired, the scene where he's in front of the mirror and the mirror breaks in front of him,
Mm-hmm.
piece of the mirror went down his throat.
Yeah, he said he swallowed some shards of glass. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they had to cancel like a bunch of shows, but they rescheduled.
I wish he would have swallowed that shard of glass when he was making the song. It might have sounded better.
No, Ian, you're making me sicker, dude. You're hurting my sensitive. Song I like.
Oh man.
I wish we could go back and edit this video so every time you talk, it's the dog in your picture. Like we could just make the mouth on the dog move. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Hey, see if somebody will do it. Anybody in the chat have the technology? I'd love to see that. Seriously, I'll take this video down and add that video.
Yeah, the
I'll
dog
give-
would say, I'm not really Jeff Nichols, I'm Ralph.
Yeah, we'll get Mark Daly to do it. I know what he listens to. He has no friends. He's got time on his hands.
Somebody said earlier.
Might take him a while though. He can't drive 55.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, you're familiar with him.
Yeah. I'm sure it's not his first time being wrong, and it's certainly not his last. But before I forget again, Tony, hopefully it's not really showing up because it's white in color, but the inner to the Warner Brothers American version is white and red, which I like. Yellow.
Yeah,
I've seen that. Yep.
That's the one I got.
hmm
I actually got this with this one I have now a couple months ago on eBay, sealed for about
Awesome.
$20 because the guy spelled Sabbath wrong.
You gotta love that. Yeah, I know a guy that has got a lot of cool Randy Rhoads stuff because they spelled Rhodes wrong on eBay.
Oh, dude. But for this album, though, I mean, when I say this changed my life, I went nuts for this. It did so much, just the feeling from it. Fuck yeah, metal. And it spoke to me a lot. But the
Yeah,
collection I
got
had
the red and white.
I had to sell when, drugs. What can you fucking do? But
More drugs.
I had the 8-track of this album,
Which is very valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a guitar that I actually had custom airbrush painted with the album cover that I actually got Iommi to sign. I had tour jackets, tour shirts, fucking supposedly it was a piece of the Stonehenge set, but I don't really know. But yeah, sold it all at one point, unfortunately.
Wow.
But there's a lot of cool shit out there that relates to this record you can actually get a hold of. I have that tour book too. Same thing, ordered it out of the back of a magazine.
Nice.
I don't know where I got mine. I came across maybe at a record convention or something. Yep.
But I had one of those acetates too. That was mostly why I brought that up. It did have a little bit of a different sound to it. And but speaking of the different versions of the record, I will say it's kind of funny because the Japanese presses are always supposed to be the best. And with CDs, this is true. With the albums, it doesn't always quite work out that way on the vinyl. And I got the Born Again one, and all they did was crank it up louder, but it didn't sound very good. I don't like it like that. It loses a little bit of its balance. So I'm hoping when they do this, they don't just crank up the loudness.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the remasters do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the cheap ones, though. But if you look at all these Sabbath box sets they put out, they've done such an amazing job.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know, I really think if and when they do this, I think it'll be mind blowing. But I do think because you got to look at who's going to buy this shit. We would all buy it. But is it going to sell as much as the Ozzy stuff? No. Is it going to sell as much as the Dio stuff? No. I don't even know, quite honestly, if it would sell as much as the Tony Martin shit, because that's such a rarity, and there's so many people who we all have it because we bought it when it came out and shit, but a lot of people that are into it now, that's like a holy grail because you can't get the shit anymore. So I think
are those CDs out of print? Are the Tony Martin CDs all out of print?
Oh yeah.
yeah.
IRS went under years ago.
Yeah.
The vinyl's really hard to get.
96.
Except for Eternal Idols, because that was on Warner Brothers.
Right.
That's right. That was the last one on the contract. Forgot about that.
I know, and I'm still going to send you. I need to go when I finally packed all my shit when I moved here to Seattle. I got to go through it and find that Cross Purposes Live and send it to you.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
because I got it with the VHS, you
Yeah.
know, and everything. And
That's the one I've got in the box, in the little square box.
yeah. And what's funny, when I bought it at the time, I think I bought it maybe a year or two after it came out. And I didn't buy it initially because I didn't like the album, you know. But then I just had a funny feeling like this could be a rarity someday. This could be worth some money. Now I don't even want the money. I'll just give it to Ralph because he likes that shit.
You know,
I got the whole kit in the discount bin at Ames in the summer of '99. It had been sitting there for 3 years.
I bet.
you know, when it came out on DVD, they omitted some songs. Because you remember the CD didn't have as many songs as the concert.
Right.
When they put it out on DVD, it's like they omitted some songs.
Oh,
So-
I didn't even know it came out on DVD. They
Yeah.
repressed it after the VHS version.
Yeah, it was. I
Oh.
think like the company that does all those classic rock DVDs and stuff, they did it, and they omitted some songs off of it. And then there's a bootleg double LP out of the whole show as well, taken from the VHS.
Now, here's something I want to ask you guys. I proud myself in being a fucking nerd, but you guys might out nerd me on this. In any of the lineups past this, has any of the Born Again tracks been played with either Tony Martin or Ray Gillen?
no,
I don't think so.
none. None have
I
been,
thought Martin did Zero the Hero live at one point.
not that I know of. I never heard that. I would have known.
Huh.
Mm-mm. I know they didn't do any on the 7th Star tour,
No.
so probably not. Just like none of the 7th Star songs have probably ever been performed live either by Tony Martin or anyone.
Well, no, Martin did some live because he came in and finished out the Eternal Idol tour, and they were still doing Heart Like a Wheel and
So that
songs
was that was Ray Gillen. I'm talking
Yeah.
about. I don't think Tony Martin did. They even tour for Eternal Idol?
Yeah, they did.
Uh,
It's just Europe.
They did.
Yeah,
Because,
I
because
swear
Ray
he
Gillen
did Heart Like
did
a
the
Wheel.
original tracks. So Ray Gillen did the whole 7th Star tour, then he did the tracks for Eternal Idol, and then he left, and then Martin came in.
yeah. I
Yeah,
know
no.
they did a few shows for Eternal Idol, and one I think one got canceled due to poor ticket sales, and another one got moved to a smaller venue. I know because Fields of the Felon or whatever the fuck the name is. I know they opened up a show on that tour, but is that also when they played Sun City and took a lot of shit for it
Mhm.
in Africa? I think was that tour.
Yeah,
I thought
that was the manager. That was the manager I talked about earlier that made Tony do that.
Mhm.
Yep.
I thought they did that during the Ray Gillen period, possibly, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was actually.
Yeah.
And somebody brought up an interesting point. Axel Fiend said Zero the Hero was played in the melody of 7 Star Live. I kind of remember that because I've seen a bootleg of 7 Star Live, and I'm pretty sure, there was a little solo section where Tony was doing a bunch of shit, and he did do Zero the Hero during that. I think that's what he means.
He played the riff, during it. I think he did it during the seems like it's on Cross Purposes live maybe as well. If I remember, like a little riff medley, he may have did it on that as well.
Did anybody see that tour?
I saw the Cross Purposes tour.
No. I mean the 7 Eternal Idol or what was the one with Wasp and Anthrax? That was
7 Star, and
yeah.
I bought tickets to it, but they canceled it. It was going to be at the Miami Gusman Center, and I bought my tickets, excited because I was huge into Anthrax at that time. That was during Spreading the Disease and the Wasp I loved. And I was like, "Ooh, this is going to be awesome." I bought my ticket, and then they canceled it because I guess poor ticket sales. But yeah, I was supposed to see it.
Did you ever see Tony Martin live with Sabbath? Or yeah, you said you saw Cross Purposes.
I saw the Cross Purposes tour. Yeah, I got to see him at least once. It was Black Sabbath, Motorhead, and Morbid Angel. What a night! The two loudest band in the world, Black Sabbath and Motorhead. I think that was the first show I took earplugs because they were just deafening. Both those bands were just deafening. And they were playing together. I was like, holy crap. This is going to be brutal. And that was great, man. It was a great show, man. Remember them doing the Wizard, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. They did some good shit. And Tony Martin was awesome, man. I've been a fan of his since I heard him on Eternal Idols. And I love Ray Gillen. I love what he did on Eternal Idols. But I liked what Tony Martin did more. And what Tony Martin did was just copy Ray Gillen.
Mm-hmm.
When I interviewed him, he admitted to that. I just did exactly what Ray Gillen did. I just thought it sounded better. And I love Ray Gillen.
The lyrics, was it all Bob Daisley pretty much for Eternal Idol?
I believe so. And the laugh in the song Nightmare, that's Ray Gillen. They kept Ray Gillen in on that. But there's somebody here say Carl Madden said that when I cough I sound like Aurora Snow. You all know who Aurora Snow is?
Is that a porn star?
Yeah, she would get throat fucked a lot. So that's why I'm off camera. I got Wayne Noon's boyfriend here throat fucking me.
Oh.
Hey, Manny.
But anyway, great discussion, dudes. You got anything to say before we leave?
Listen to Born Again.
Yeah.
Same thing. Give it another chance. Check it out. I know there's some people who still can't get into it. That's on you. Just keep listening to it. It'll unfuck itself.
Yeah.
So you've been on any shows lately?
What's that?
Have you been on any shows lately you like to plug?
No, not this week. Mm-mm.
Okay. Greg, were you on Rap Salad this week?
I was not this week, unfortunately.
Ian, what's that podcast you got?
Oh, Rock and Metal Combat Podcast. And I was also on To Catch a Predator.
Yeah.
Maybe there'll be a new Rock and Metal Live this week, depending on how you feel. Spoiler alert, I had some shit go on, so I didn't line up, a fan episode, but we might do our talk to our fans this weekend if you're okay. If not, then the weekend after that, we will definitely get back to the fan reviews.
Well,
depends on your health.
I probably could do Sunday, but if I don't feel better, I'll be laying down,
Yeah. Well, if you don't feel better, I say we just wait and then do one of the fan episodes. So but you guys should be on the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast Facebook page. Look there for updates, and hope you feel better, Ralph.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, get better, dude.
It sucks. It sucks almost as bad as Van Hagen.
Oh, it's not that bad.
Oh, almost as bad. Not as bad. Anyway, I want to thank everybody that's been in the chat tonight. A lot of people. I felt like it was 90 something. And
wow.
Yeah, man, these Thursday shows rule. And as sick as I was, I wanted to do it. We got to get back on here because these Thursday shows rule. I want to thank you, Greg, for joining us. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Right on.
Nice to meet you, brher.
Good to meet you, Greg.
Tony, I knew as soon as those naked pics of you leaked online, the numbers would come in. So awesome.
Yep. For sure.
And I want to thank Tony and Ian as always. Thank you so much for joining the show. And
Always.
Chances are you'll see Ian and I on the Rock and Metal Combat Podcast this Sunday. So subscribe to that channel. Everybody out there, thank you so much for joining in. And again, thank you, everybody. Good night. And smack 'em a cow.